Well, we're back, and we're going to be talking about conflict. I am delighted to have in the studio with us today Cinda Christie. She's a counselor with Trinity Counseling Center in Medford, and you're busy.
I am busy. It's a busy place.
Yeah, you guys are real busy. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
We're talking about conflict today. Oh, by the way, if you want to call in, you can. The phone number is 776-5368. And if you're outside one of the regional stations listening up and down the coast or over in Klamath Falls in Northern California, you can join us too. We'll even pay for the phone call. 1-800-373-5368. That's toll free, 1-800-373-5368, or locally 776-5368. Well, how do we deal with conflict? You're the counselor. But what's the royal law? We've been plugging that all morning, and I think I know what it is.
Yeah, that's the question. How do we follow the royal law? So in Matthew, you know, Jesus talked about the greatest commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and also love your neighbor as yourself. Well, then James comes along, and he calls that the royal law, loving your neighbor as yourself. Because it's kind of an important law. Question
the
is,
11th commandment.
How do you do it?
How do you do it when you don't like that person? Huh?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. If you're getting along with someone, oh great, I'm following the royal law. Everything's beautiful, harmonious. You know, I'm being a good Christian.
Yeah.
And then you meet up with somebody that you don't agree with, or even within your family, you have a conflict, and it heats up, and ouch, kind of lose it.
You know, what's so interesting is I think everything seems to be polarized and divided. And then that spills over in the relationships.
Yes, it does.
You know, and we don't handle conflict very well. So give us some rules, maybe the boundaries, the lines.
Sure, sure.
What do we do?
What I want to talk about first is just, you know, what are the common areas that people fight about? Like, what would you think are some of those common areas?
Money.
Yep, that's the top one, especially with couples and relationships.
It is?
Yeah. Money.
Probably, money, children.
Children, that's a big one. How do you parent them, especially in step families? That's a huge problem.
Yeah. And I would say just probably family time. I mean, how much people are working versus how much time they're home.
Okay, that's another one. I hadn't even thought about that, but that is an issue. Absolutely. So a social psychologist came up with 6 areas, and you hit the first one. Control over resources, so that's money, kids, possessions, and then your preferences, just like how you like to do things around the house, or you know how you squeeze the toothpaste, or
does it come off the top of the bottle?
Yeah, that's right. How the toilet paper's rolled. I mean, just silly little things like that can really annoy people and get on each other's nerves over that kind of thing. And then there are, you know, your values, how you spend your time, how you spend your money. You know, that there could be differences with that. And then your beliefs, like you said, religion and politics, and the way our country's become, everything is polarized. So it's touchy out there, really, even, you know, just in the workplace. There's a couple more.
Yeah.
Your goals, what are your aspirations for the future? You know, people have different ideas. I mean, even a young couple that gets married, one may have an idea of how their life's going to go, and the other one has a different idea. And if you don't talk about it, you're setting yourself up for a big conflict.
Right.
And the last one is the nature of the relationship. Then we have this other whole issue, people's personalities. You know, some people are like easygoing, and then there's other people who are very intense, and you get 2 intense people together, and you know, you can have an explosion.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So there's lots of things to fight about. So maybe we should talk about how to win.
Well, you know, I was just going to ask you that. Do we approach conflict with the idea I got to win it? I mean,
a lot of people do,
Yeah.
and you know, they get into that whole tug of war idea. You know, I'm going to win. My idea is better, and you know, even if they do win, do you think they really win?
No.
They don't. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Because how does the other person feel?
Deflated, defeated,
humiliated,
rejected,
embarrassed, or you know, or not understood. So you think, oh, I won that. But in the end, you lost the relationship.
Yeah.
So now you can't go into it with that idea that you're going to win. If you do that, then you know you're going to lose in the end.
So when does a conflict go from healthy to unhealthy?
I would say when that emotional intensity escalates. So when we think about emotional intensity, you've probably been there where something comes up and you feel it inside, you heat up and, your heart starts pounding and you feel the blood coming up in your neck and, face, and that's when it's really hard to deal with it because you're so emotionally involved. You can't get objective, you can't just listen, you can't think through it, and you react.
I have also, now again, Cinda's with us today, and if you want to ask any questions, by the way, if you want to remain anonymous, we'll respect that as well, because conflict resolution is not an easy thing to do, and it's amazing how little things can begin to really create the rub, and then the boundaries are set, and everybody gets uptight and goes in the wrong direction. But how do we know we are into this now rub area where it's going to become serious?
Okay, so a lot of people will tell me they go from like 0 to 180 just like that.
Yeah.
And so what I do with folks is I help them kind of find that middle place where they're starting to feel it. Like where in their body are they starting to feel the tension? Do you feel it? Some people will say their chest tightens up or they feel it in their shoulder. So to begin to identify, I'm getting upset. And when you find yourself doing that, that's when you kind of need to step back a little bit and just go, okay, I got to slow myself down here. I'm getting too upset. And when you don't, that's when you end up saying things you regret, you hurt people, you're mad at yourself because you yelled or cussed or, lost it.
Yeah.
So it's learning how to identify that, okay, I'm heating up, I need to pull back, or say, hey, let's talk about this a couple days from now. We can't talk about it right now.
One of the things I've noticed, Cinda, that goes is respect. If you lose respect for the person you're having a conflict, I think that's perhaps one of the most damaging things you can do. If you lose respect for that person because you disagree, to me, you could be running the risk of losing everything.
Yeah, and you will. Yeah, and I'm thinking of the behavior, the aggressive style. Mm-hmm. There are 3 kinds of ways of reacting in a conflict. So being aggressive, being passive, or being assertive. So when you're not respecting, that's
passive, aggressive, and assertive.
Passive, aggressive, and assertive. So when we think about aggressive, we're looking at somebody who's what? What does that look like to you? If you think of an aggressive person.
Well, they're going to win.
Okay. Yeah, they have the goal. They're going to win.
Yeah.
And what do you see in the body language?
Rage, almost.
Yeah. Just, their face tightens up. They're intimidating. They're kind of coming at you. Like, have you ever had anybody in your face?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, woo, and they're eyes are piercing and they're spitting. It's like, okay, that's aggressive. And so there's that intimidation. Is there respect? No, there's no respect for the other person. And it's, it's the belief is I must put others down in order to protect myself. So it's a very selfish, I got to win, I got to protect myself, and I don't really care how you come out of this, So it's almost like a bully.
Yeah, what is it in a person that now, if you were to correct them, they'd probably say, "No, I'm not doing that."
Yeah.
But it appears that when they are responding, it is very condemning and intimidating. In other words, they are saying things that are putting you down. They are intimating that you're the dummy and I'm the smart one, or you're wrong and I'm right.
Right.
And if you confront them on it, I go, "No, that's not what I mean at all." And I go, well, that's not how it's coming out.
No, and that's why you meet somebody who's 40 or 50 who's still aggressive because they've never accepted feedback. How do we grow as people? How do we grow as Christians? How have you grown and matured? Because somebody's pointed something out to you. And then you've been upset at first, but then you look at it and go, oh yeah, I probably was out of line there, I misspoke or whatever. And you take the feedback. And then we mature and we grow.
Yeah.
People who don't take the feedback, that's when we get people who are narcissistic, they have personality disorders. And you can't work with them in counseling because they won't come back. You confront them and then they're done.
So an unteachable spirit.
It's an unteachable spirit, and it's also the pride, arrogance, it's the anger, pride, arrogance, and God has, said it over and over in Proverbs, I hate pride, I hate arrogance, and that is not really, God's heart.
But you're the counselor, and people come into you, and they dump.
Oh, yeah.
And you turn around and say, here's what you're doing wrong.
Right.
And if they don't accept that, isn't it kind of a waste of time at that?
Well, it is frustrating because I like to see people change and grow.
Yeah, right.
And when you get people and you feel like you're speaking and you're hitting a wall, well, you've met them all around. And they do come in counseling because their partner drags them in. And like, you need to go to counseling. Like the counselor is going to have a magic wand and change that. And And, you know, there can be a lot of change in counseling if a person has a willing heart. And sometimes people have to reach rock bottom to get there and maybe be at risk of having a divorce or losing their family because of their behavior. Sometimes that's what it takes.
All right, passive.
The passive. Okay, so what would you say about a passive person?
Whatever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. You know, they're the nice person, easygoing. They placate. You know, they avoid conflict.
All right, let me take a break here.
Okay.
We're going to come back, and Cinda Christie, is with us, and we're going to talk about: are you a passive? Are you an aggressive? What's the other one?
Assertive.
Assertive.
Yes.
Mm,
We don't want to forget the assertive. We'll get there.
Okay. Sharpen your claws. We'll be right back. All right, we're talking about conflict resolution, and it's a big subject. And Cinda Christie's with us today. She's a counselor with Trinity Counseling Center here in Medford. By the way, your phone number there is?
541-245-2787.
It is a great group of counselors there, and you have a variety of expertise.
Yes, we do.
Yours is?
Well, I work with families. Mostly I work with children, teens, and couples, and do a lot of family work. So about relationships, communication, parenting, work with step families. That's kind of my focus.
That's a big portfolio.
Yes.
Okay, but anyway, 245-2787 if you want to get a hold of Trinity Counseling Center. Today we're talking about conflict resolution, and Cinda is explaining to us assertive, passive, and aggressive. So, but right now it's passive.
We're on to passive, that's right. So that person, you know, the conflict avoider, so that you have to think about what they're thinking about themselves. So in their minds, the belief is, I must never make anyone else uncomfortable. It's better for me to be uncomfortable than for somebody else.
So they take the load.
They take the load. They're the doormat, you know, so it's like they let people step on them, or they're the ones to say, okay, you know, if they're in a conflict with a friend and the friend wants to do this and they want to do something else, they'll say, okay. I mean, they don't speak up and stand up for themselves, and they get taken advantage of.
So, what's the how does a passive come about? What's in their background that makes them passive?
You know,
Did they get hurt somewhere along the line?
Yeah, probably wounded from childhood or in a home where their voice didn't matter. You know, maybe they had an abusive parent where they tried to speak up and they were, you know, beaten or shut down, so they never, you know, they didn't feel like they could have a voice or that their voice mattered. And so it's, you know, there's a woundedness there and a low self-esteem.
Is that a lit stick of dynamite? Is that going to go off someday?
Well, there you go. Yeah, sometimes people do. They hold it in, and then it just blows, and then they do lose it. Yeah, exactly.
Really?
Yeah, lots of people have told me that. You know, they
really?
hold it in, you know, and then it'll be a small thing, and then explosion hits, and yeah, they do. They can explode. That's for sure. And some people who hold it in for a long, long time become very depressed. And I've had people come in who are absolutely suicidal because they've not been able to express their needs or wants.
Wow. All right, assertive.
So assertive. So when we think of assertive, what do you think of?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, you said respect.
Yeah.
Somebody who's respectful of others. And how would their body language be in a conflict? Would they be in your face, or would there be kind of a...
They flow.
Yeah, they would flow. They have eye contact. They're looking at you, and they may, but not intensely. Yeah, you know, you don't want to do. I mean, that kind of, you know, have you had people like that are so intense? You just like, So you know, no, not intensely. They're honest. They tell you how they feel. You know, hey, when you left your dirty socks on the floor, you know, day after day, I'm starting to get upset about that. Can you please pick them up? You know, that's an assertive statement. Was it loud? Was it yelling? Was it just telling somebody how you feel? So.
All right. I don't think there isn't a relationship out there that doesn't meet these barriers once in a while, even good ones.
Even good ones, absolutely.
Know? And so.
Can't avoid conflict.
You can't avoid it.
You think you can, but only if you're on an island, you know?
Yeah.
You're alone.
Does a soft answer turn away wrath?
Well, there you go. That's what the Bible says, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a soft answer, yeah. But that doesn't mean being the doormat. That doesn't mean, you know, just always giving in and never saying what you need. I mean, that's not, you know, we're loved by God and we're children of God. He wants us to be able to have a voice and say what our needs are. So speak the truth in love. You know, I always go back to that when talking with folks. And how do you do that? You tell them how you feel, and you do it in love.
All right. Where does the judgmental spirit fit in? Is it with the aggressive, the assertive?
Well, it would not be assertive. You know, the judgmental, I think it could be aggressive or passive. Passive person can develop that inner, you know, judgmental, oh, they never do anything I want, or, you know, but they haven't spoken up, you know, and so then they're blaming the other person. Or maybe they don't want to make decisions because they don't want to have the responsibility, so they, you know, let the other person do it, and then they're mad because it wasn't what they wanted, you know, so then they criticize or judge over that. And so, and the other thing I want to say about that passive is that they develop bitterness. They think they're being Christian by giving in, and yet they develop that bitterness within and resentment. And, you know, Paul talks about that, like, you know, get rid of all bitterness. So passive people develop the bitterness, even though they'll say, I'm not an angry person, I get along with everybody. But then you find out they got all this stuff going on.
Narcissism is, I mean, that whole word.
Oh, yeah. We could do a whole talk on narcissism.
Well, you know, it's interesting. It never was in our lexicon until just recently.
Yeah.
Now it's all over the place.
It is.
And
it really is.
So what's it mean?
Narcissism. Okay, so this is a person who is completely self-absorbed. And so
Do they know it?
Mostly not. Do not, in fact, will see themselves as being caring and giving to others, but it's an unrealistic view of themselves. They have a great deal of trouble having empathy for other people, and so everything gets framed around them. So you might have a conversation with, you know, a couple people, and somehow or another it turns about to the narcissist. They start talking about themselves, and it kind of tends to focus that way.
Well, that's interesting because it's showing up today in incredible ways, and you're seeing it more in counseling. I'm hearing more about it in counseling. And if a person who is narcissistic doesn't see themselves as that,
it's incredibly difficult.
How in the world do you manage through that?
It's very tough. Well, actually, it's really interesting. One of my friends who's a counselor in Sacramento that I was a college roommate with, she has written a book, You Might Be a Narcissist If. And it kind of goes through all the, you know, for people, and it's a smaller book, You Might Be a Narcissist If, Lisa Charlebois. And she does talk about, you know, the traits to look for, you know, if you might be a narcissist. I actually have a couple where the husband's reading it.
Really?
You know?
Well,
so,
is it low self-esteem? Where they, is it,
yeah, you know,
or are you begging for attention? What's behind this person?
Yeah, it's your ego is just very small, you know, fragile. So when somebody tries to confront a narcissist, it's like painful to them, and it's like, you know, it's like piercing. That's what it feels like to them, like someone cutting them. When you might just be telling someone something and they go, oh, I didn't know about that. They would be like, you know, that's not true. I didn't do that. Very difficult to have a relationship. And they can be very charming. You know, they're talented people, intelligent. And you might think, wow, this is a great person. Then you get to know them, and then you have a conflict. That's when it comes out, when you disagree. Because a narcissist demands that you agree with them. Oh. Yes.
No negotiation?
There is no negotiation. Their way or the highway. You've heard that terminology. So they want, and they can be master manipulators.
Can they take criticism?
Not really.
So that's painful. That's painful to them.
It's very painful. So what do you do if you're married to someone like that?
Well,
you know,
how do you get through? What's the code to get in there?
Well, what works with a narcissist is a passive. So you get the two together, and then, you know, because the passive person will go along and placate, and that way the narcissist has a good, you know, then that works for a while until the passive person decides they don't want to do it anymore.
All right, let's go back to the royal law.
Yes.
All right, we got an assertive, we got a passive, we got an aggressive, and we got a narcissist.
Yeah, we threw that one in.
How do they love their neighbor as themselves when they're absorbed with themselves?
Well, there you go. It doesn't really work too well. But they might be somebody who's in charge of a charity and doing all those things, but when it comes to
them,
confronting behavior, that's when it doesn't really work. So they do have trouble in the workplace, and they have trouble with families, and they don't always understand why the relationship didn't work. And it will usually be because of the other person. It's the other person's fault.
All right, so we're in these conflicts at various levels and degrees. Are there some phrases or keywords we shouldn't say that, because if we're not careful, we could accelerate what could be a warm conversation into World War III?
Right. Yeah, there you go. And exactly. So it's those phrases like "you should," or "you shouldn't." You know, "you shouldn't have done that," or "you always do that." So it's even like the issue about the socks on the floor. "You always do that." I mean, immediately it's like criticizing the person's character instead of just dealing with, "Hey, you left the socks on the floor. Can you please pick them up?" You know, it's sometimes women will do that too. I think with men, is they'll do that. You always do this, or, you know, and then it's a personal attack instead of just the complaint. Stick to the point. Don't do these global, "you never," "you should," "you always." Well, I wouldn't do that. Have you ever had somebody say that to you? Well, I wouldn't feel that way. Or why do you feel that way? And then you just feel like, oh, I don't know, I feel that way.
Yeah. So we're not respecting one another's feelings. Even though we may disagree with them, we don't respect them.
Exactly. And can somebody else have a different feeling?
Sure, it's America. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do.
And can somebody have a different opinion? Of course, you do this all day long. You hear about different views and opinions, and so it's being okay. Letting somebody else have a different opinion than you doesn't change who you are, and you can still respect them.
What is it about us as assertive, passive, aggressive narcissists that have to win the conversation? We have to be right. What is it? What is it in us?
Well, it's a heart issue. You know, it's a heart that's not surrendered to the Lord, because you have to have a humbleness to be able to respect somebody else, or to be able to step back and listen to their point of view and go, "Oh, okay, I understand that," and maybe ask a few more questions. "Well, tell me more, I don't really understand," or "could you clarify that?" So if you're in an issue with somebody and they blow up, if you could just step back a little bit and get into your thinking mode instead of that emotional place, and just say, "Yeah, I really don't understand what's making you so upset. Tell me what is it? Now, what happened? What did I do? Or can you clarify?" That can just open the door for communication.
My many years involved in politics, I've learned that arguing gets you nowhere.
Right.
No, and I'm not saying that to be passive.
No.
But I've learned that if you get into the disagreement, if you don't learn how to back off, then you ruin the atmosphere to have a good dialogue.
Exactly.
By which you can agree to disagree agreeably.
Yes. And I'm sure the politicians who figured that out have done better than those who, you know, get so locked that they don't know how to work with the other person, right?
There you go. Well, Cinda, thanks for coming in. And let me just say that Cinda's with Trinity Counseling Center, 245-2787, 245-2787 in Medford. And whether you're assertive, passive, aggressive, and you don't think you're narcissistic, give her a call.
Okay.
Come back, will you?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on Focus Today.